Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. Today is Friday, April 28th, 2023. I'm Dr. Yamonja Smalls, Director of Professional Development for Maryland Department of Health's Developmental Disabilities Administration. We welcome you to the monthly series of DDA updates with Deputy Secretary Bernie Simons. On the panel today, we have Bernie Simons, Deputy Secretary for the DDA, Robert White, Director of Operations, Rhonda Workman, Director of Federal Programs and Integrity, Nick Burton, Director of Programs, and Jennifer Metrick, Executive Director of Liberty Healthcare Corporation. Before we begin, I'd like to go over a few things about the webinar. All participants are in listen-only mode. There are two options to hear the webinar, by computer and phone. If you look at the panel interface to your right labeled audio, you can click either computer or phone to switch for the best option for you. We will be recording the webinar and posting this session on YouTube and the DDA website. Today's PowerPoint has also been uploaded as an attachment and is available to you to download in the webinar panel box. If you're listening by phone and you request that it be mailed to you, we will email it. Questions can be typed into the question or chat box in the webinar panel, and we will get to those at the end, towards the end of the presentation. And now I'd like to introduce Deputy Secretary Bernie Simons. Good morning, Bernie.
Good morning, and thank you. And thank you for joining us on our monthly community webinar. And I look forward to sharing more important information with you since the last time we were all together. And as you heard Dr. Smalls introduce, Rhonda, Nick, and Robert will be providing some updates in the areas that they have oversight on. And also Jennifer Metrick will be addressing some issues. Rhonda will basically be talking about the Appendix K. We did do a webinar last week, but I thought it'd be important for us to talk about that again. She will also mention that CMS did approve our waivers. As many of you know, we've been working and got your input on the waivers that were to expire on June 30th. We started working on this in January. And so effective July 1, you'll see the information that's in there and, you know, what we've shared on webinars and tools and updated. And, you know, as we continue to go on with our priorities, it's to become efficient as we share the information. And so, you know, we've internally taken a look at this and had discussion with the department's communication staff to make sure that the way we are presenting it is easily understood, so that it's not we're not writing for the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services as a technical guide. So, you know, the end user, in our opinion, is basically taking a look at people who are in supports and services, their families, providers, so that there's a clear understanding of what's available so that they can experience a great life that's in their dreams, desires, etc. Programmatically, Nick's going to be sharing a couple of reminders and updates about as we transition into the LTSS Maryland DDA module as we keep moving along. And, you know, some of the providers haven't chosen to go live date, but, you know, we're going to start to have that discussion because, you know, this can't go on for forever. We need to, you know, start moving. We've been very successful with the providers, case management, individuals and families, and where we are. We've got about 83, 84 providers who are live right now, 100% of the agency at the end of this month, which is only a couple of days away. And then finally, Robert's going to talk about the APA reconciliation as a follow-up to yesterday's webinar that we had. And then Jennifer will do some updates about where we are with Liberty and the work that they're doing and working on. So again, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. And now I'm going to turn this back over to Dr. Smalls, our Director of Professional Development, who's going to do a little more about DDA in the newsletter, etc. So thank you.
Thanks, Bernie. Everyone, your feedback is incredibly important to us. And in response to the suggestions about how we share information with you, effective April 4th, the DDA has moved to sending out a weekly newsletter, the DDA Connection, to streamline how and when we communicate with our community partners. We want to keep you informed, and we'll strive to ensure a consistent flow of engaging information every Thursday afternoon. With the exception of certain holiday periods, the DDA Connection will be sent out to everyone on our subscription list. If you haven't subscribed, please click our link on the home page, and we'll make sure that you're included in our weekly newsletter. At the end of each update, there is a link that you can click to provide and share feedback, which will help us to continually improve the information that we share with you. In last week's DDA Connection, we asked, how do you do you? Like, seriously, how do you do you? We want to know. We want to know more about you. We want to share your story. And we'd like to hear how DDA supports and services have helped you to become more independent, access technology, get a job, meet new friends, etc. We want to hear your story, and it's worth telling. So let's connect. If you're interested in sharing, please send me an email. I've got my email there. And we're definitely interested in interviewing and hearing more about your successes. You can review past newsletters by visiting the DDA website and clicking the DDA Connection link card on the home page. At this time, you may read past newsletters by clicking the date of any of the updates you'd like to review. Rhonda, I'm going to kick it off to you now.
Great. Thank you, Yamanja. Happy Friday to everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to, again, share some updates on the waiver renewal and Appendix K unwinding. Next slide, please. As the Deputy Secretary has shared, we are extremely happy and excited about the approval of the DDA-operated Medicaid waiver programs by the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. And this includes the DDA's Family Supports Waiver, Community Supports Waiver, and Community Pathways Waiver. The changes that we had proposed to CMS and that have been recently approved will all go into effect on July 1st, 2023. On this slide, we've included some information about our next steps. We will start to share next week a renewal service summary chart for teams to consider now while developing plans with an effective date of July 1st. We will also post updated track change documents to the DDA renewal pages to reflect the changes that were made during the public input process and the discussion and review by CMS. We are in the process of updating our policies and our guidance to align with the July 1st effective date. And we'll also be conducting a DDA waiver renewal webinar on May 19th. We've included the link in our slide for registration, and it was also included in the DDA connections that went out yesterday. We are also looking at conducting a webinar specific for self-directed services, and we'll be putting out information next week related to that and providing updated information related to the budget sheet, modification, and the changes related to the renewal. Finally, we are also looking to share a DDA Connection special edition that would be very specific to the renewal changes and to keep those information clear for everybody. So that'll be coming soon. Next slide, please. As the Deputy Secretary shared, we really appreciate the opportunity last week to share updates related to the unwinding of the DDA's Appendix K flexibilities. This slide is from the April 21st webinar as a reminder of the remaining DDA Appendix K flexibilities that are ending. These flexibilities are associated with funding and retainer payments, hiring and training requirements, service flexibilities, staff ratios, and self-direction. These flexibilities will end on June 30th unless otherwise noted in the DDA waiver programs or guidance. The DDA will be issuing reminder communications related to the unwinding of our flexibilities leading up to July 1st, and the first one will be going out on Monday. Please keep these things in mind as you are working through your individual provider or person-specific unwinding processes. Next slide, please. And this slide is a reminder of the flexibilities that will remain permanent under the DDA programs. This was also included in our presentation last week. You'll see that there's a variety of flexibilities that we're going to continue to utilize through our waiver renewal. And it's important to refer to the guidance and additional information that we'll be sharing that will help to elaborate related to these flexibilities. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Rhonda. That's all really helpful information and super exciting about our waiver getting approved. So I want to give you guys some really quick program updates, like Bernie said, around our LTSS transition and PCP enhancements. So Dr. Smalls, can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, LTSS transition, it's everybody's favorite roadmap. I just wanted to first say thanks to everyone who completed the LTSS transition survey that we sent out a few weeks ago. Really great responses. We're kind of going through those right now. We're going to be sharing those with the Employment First work group so that they can start looking at those, making some recommendations and suggestions, and then also internally DDA leadership is looking at those. And we'll certainly follow up with any questions and whatever next steps may transpire from that. So again, thank you so much for completing the survey. It really helps us when you're able to give us really good feedback, particularly around things that are working well. It's still good to get that feedback. So thank you. And then I just want to remind everybody, please, please, please start working with your regional director to pick a transition date. It's really important to get that date picked on a calendar so that folks can start working towards that. It's really important for us to get a date on the calendar. You know, certainly have that conversation with your regional director. The regional offices are here to support. It's a very engaging, collaborative process, which I'm sure many of you that have gone through can attest to, and probably many of you have already seen. So please reach out to your regional director. Please pick a date. We understand that it may be a little bit in the future, but pick a date. It's really important. You don't want to wait till the last minute to have a transition date and have to feel like you have to scramble. So please reach out to your regional director today and pick a transition date. Next slide, please. And then just around person-centered planning enhancements, a couple things. We sent out a request for interest to participate in our person-centered planning implementation with UMKC, the University of Missouri, Kansas City. And we got such great feedback. I think at this point, after I looked yesterday, it was about 50 people expressed an interest. So we're going through that to make sure we have good, diverse representation. A couple of things that we still need. One is representation from community advocates and people that are receiving DDA services. So yesterday in the DDA Connection, we did put a link saying, hey, we need some more representation from these two groups before we can get started. So please take a look at that in the Connection. Express your interest if you fall into one of these groups. You're going to be a part of the implementation of a person-centered planning enhancements that really speak to the principles of what it means to engage in a meaningful person-centered planning process. So particularly if you're receiving DDA support, we really want to hear your feedback on that, and we want to take into consideration your experience. So please let us know if you want to help participate. I will be sending out invitation letters to participants that meet the criteria based on the request that we sent out for interest. And those should be going out the first week of May so that we can have the first PCP enhancement implementation meeting at the end of May. I believe we said the save the date was for May 31st. And once we have the participants, we'll get that on the calendar and scheduled. So thank you. That's it for me, Dr. Smones.
Thank you, Nick. Next slide, please. So good morning, everyone, and thank you again for joining us today. As Bernie mentioned, yesterday we conducted a webinar on the 5.5% ARPA reconciliation process. And just as a reminder for providers that maintain services in PCIS 2, the reconciled amount, positive or negative, will be included as part of the FY24 Q1 payment. And for providers that no longer maintain services in PCIS 2, they will either receive a check or an invoice from us, depending on whether or not the reconciled amount is positive or negative. Next slide. In addition to the webinar, we have also set up some office hours for next week. This slide reflects the days and the times for those office hours. Interested parties will be able to sign up for 20-minute slots. Next slide. And this slide has both a link and a QR code that providers will be able to use to go to schedule a day and a time to meet with the fiscal staff regarding the ARPA reconciliation. And to discuss things like, invoice details, calculations, etc. Walkthrough of the invoice in PCIS 2. This is very similar to the process that we set up when we went through the personal supports reconciliations late last year. If you attempt to sign up and all spaces have been filled, then please let us know. We will either add additional days or just schedule a time to sit with you to walk through your details, and that would be depending on how many on demand actually. Before the end of the webinar yesterday, we've already had providers go in and start to sign up for those slots, so we were glad to see that, and we look forward to that engagement. Next slide, please. And just as a reminder, we are still working through the grant applications that we have received. We still anticipate that award letters will begin to go out the week of May 15th, with all letters being dispersed by the end of the month. And again, we can begin funding the grants starting July 1st. Now I'd like to turn it over to Jennifer Metrick for a Liberty Healthcare update.
Thank you, Robert, and good morning, everyone, and happy Friday. So you can go to the next slide. So we're going to give a few updates on the work that Liberty has been doing in conjunction with the DDA around our pursuit towards person-centered excellence, and these three main components that really take shape the work that Liberty is doing with the department. So I know you've seen these quite regularly, but there's three main areas. We're looking at how to improve system quality and participant outcomes. That work that Liberty will be doing is in partnership with the Council for Quality and Leadership through their network accreditation. So this would be statewide accreditation that we're working towards over the next 4 years. And then we have the work that we're doing with the National Core Indicators surveying around the individual survey of participants, and then also the 2 family surveys. And then finally, the last part of the work is around system compliance and ensuring that we are assisting the department with data collection around waiver assurance performance measures. So we'll give a few updates and then I'll give some more detail in the next slides. But for right now, let's start with CQL and the work we're doing towards network accreditation. So we've been able to partner with 9 providers or 8 providers and service providers and 1 CCS agency as part of our certification of our staff at Liberty to become certified in the basic assurance reviews. So these are on-site reviews that we'll be conducting as part of this pilot with CQL staff. So they're training our team and certifying them over 3 different sets of reviews. And so those started last week. We had our first 3 providers participate. We've got a lot of wonderful feedback from that and some really good experiences that were shared. So these are reviews where appreciative inquiry is utilized to really make sure that we're affirming the wonderful work that's already happening within those provider agencies towards person-centered practice, and then also being able to highlight some of those opportunities in which there can be growth and quality enhancement. So once our team members are certified, then we will be launching those basic assurance reviews for a sampling of providers each year. So to prepare for that, there will be basic assurance training from CQL that will occur on May 15th, May 16th, May 17th, May 23rd, and May 24th. So they're at a variety of times. There's a communication coming out to be able to register for one of those 5 dates. We're highly recommending that leadership of each provider agency, potentially those from your HR teams, your finance teams, your operations or services teams, have representation on these webinars to talk through what to expect as part of the basic assurance process and what you'll experience in that 3 to 4 day on-site reviews that will be happening. And so as a reminder, because this certainly came up as part of our process when we've been piloting these first basic assurance reviews, is the information that CQL and Liberty is collecting as part of the basic assurances, as well as the personal outcome measure, which is an interview with participants. That information, all of it will be collected and provided back to each provider. But the information beyond that will only be in aggregate. So we'll be providing the department and the greater community information in aggregate, which means across. It's not specific to any one provider. It'll be across all providers for a data collection period so that we can really hone in on those major themes of where is the system strong and things are going well, and then where are those opportunities where we can grow together. So that everybody's aware, we will be launching the basic assurance reviews in earnest starting in the beginning of July. So each year, approximately 55, 56 providers will be selected to participate within that year in a basic assurance review. And so we'll be sending that information out and then scheduling those at least 90 days in advance of those reviews actually happening. So that's a little bit about CQL. So we also are close to reaching all of our goals for the National Court Indicator surveys for this year. So we have to have all of that data collection finished by the end of June. We're about 25 participants away from meeting the minimum goal for the in-person survey. So I think today we have nearly 376. So my slide's a little outdated because we've done several interviews since that time. So we're about 25 away from that. We really want to do a shout out to all the CCSs and the CCS agencies and the providers that have been coming alongside us to help us connect with participants so that they are able to have a choice in whether or not to participate in the survey. So we really appreciate that partnership. It has really, we've seen a spike in people responding to us because of that. We also have collected over 750 family surveys. So there's 2 family surveys, an adult family survey for those families that live with a participant, and then the family guardian survey for those that do not live with a participant. And we've exceeded our goal for the adult family survey, but we haven't quite hit it yet for the family guardian survey. So you may be receiving phone calls from our team, emails, just trying to connect to be able to make sure that we are able to connect and provide you an opportunity to complete that survey. And I have a little bit more data on the next one. And then with our system compliance, we have started both the targeted case management reviews as well as the provider utilization reviews. So we're about 70% complete on all 3 combined of our targeted case management reviews. And I have a little bit more information coming up on that. And then with our utilization reviews, they started on the 17th, so last week. We did start sending out communication to providers that had claims selected as part of the utilization review sample. Not all providers received information that first week. We are staggering it out so that the volume coming in, we're able to get that information reviewed and turned around quickly. So we are staggering those communications to providers over the next few weeks. Those communications outline the specific claims that will be reviewed, the kind of documentation that's needed to review as part of that claims review process, and where to send that information. So if there's any questions about that, we do have an email address specific for utilization reviews. It's MD, so for Maryland, MD claims review, that's all one word, MD claims review at libertyhealth.com. And that email address is also in the standard operating procedure that is on the QIO page of the DDA website. And so we can go on to the next slide. And here's just the information I was just sharing with you in terms of our NCI completions. So we're really at 376 right now. So we're close to that minimum target of 400 participants and hoping to exceed that, well exceed that by the end of June. And then you can see that we've exceeded the 400 surveys for the adult family, but we still have a bit ways to go for the family guardian survey. So if you would like to participate, for some reason you haven't received our letters or postcards from Liberty with the survey information, you can reach out to us at marylandqio@libertyhealth.com, or you can call our 1-800 number that we man during regular office hours, 8:30 to 5:30, so that we are able to get you a survey so you can participate. And the next slide. All right, so here's just a little bit more information about our review status for the targeted case management reviews. So there are 3 different reviews that we're conducting. One is around billing and the billing activity notes that CCSs are submitting. So we are looking at a random selection of those billing activity notes. All of the initial billing reviews have been completed. As CCS agencies, you should be receiving yesterday and today your initial reports. So those are Excel reports that share all of the information around the review for each and every claim. And so it'll share with you any claims that did not meet standards and those that did and why. And so there's also an opportunity to provide supplemental documentation that you have 20 business days to provide back to Liberty, and then we'll re-review those billing claims and resend a finalized billing review by the end of June. We also are doing initial level of care reviews. Those are about 92% complete, and we're really starting to dig into our case file reviews, which is our largest review. It's the most comprehensive around the person-centered planning process, as well as monitoring and a few other things. And so once the initial level of care and case file reviews are completed, those final reports also will be going out to CCS agencies in a similar format to what you'll receive as part of the billing reviews. Next slide, please. So what's up next is completion of our pilot for the basic assurance reviews with CQL. So that's happening April through May. The trainings that I mentioned for the basic assurance for all providers. We'll be completing our baseline reviews of the targeted case management reviews, as well as the provider utilization reviews. So that will happen by the end of June. We'll complete our FY23 NCI surveying by the end of June. And we are now focused on further development and piloting and then finalization of our health and welfare reviews. So that's reviewing the critical incident process and also the investigations that OHCQ does for those type 1 critical incidents. We'll also be looking at restraint-related incidents and ER and hospitalization data matching up with our PCIS2 incident reporting. We're also further developing and finalizing the pieces of our reviews that are related to qualified provider and the performance measures related to those. So you can go to the next slide. And that's what we have for our updates today from Liberty. If you need to get in touch with us with any questions, if there's general questions, my email address is here. Please do not hesitate to reach out. Thank you.
So this
slide it has the link that you can see and share with your colleagues, families, participants of our supports and services. And then after you register for the webinar, you receive confirmation containing information about how to join. And now I think we should move to the questions that have come in from everybody who's been here. And again, I want to thank everybody for participating.
Great. Okay, so we got a few questions here, and I'll just go through these one by one and ask that our team respond accordingly. All right, first question. On page 8 of the slideshow, it says that hiring relatives and legally responsible individuals is an Appendix K flexibility that's ending on 6/30 with some exceptions. But on 9, it says that the same flexibility is made permanent. Could you please explain further, Rhonda?
Thank you for sharing your question. yes, there are some of the flexibilities for hiring relatives and legally responsible individuals that were included in the waiver renewal. In our presentation last week on the unwinding, we included a slide that gave you a chart for those services where relatives and legally responsible individuals could provide services. The whole presentation is on our Appendix K dedicated page, and we can also share that and send it out. But for services where that flexibility continues, it relates to community development services, employment services, live-in caregiver supports, nursing support services, participant education, training, and advocacy, personal supports, respite care, shared living, support brokers, supported living, and transportation. There are some, standards related to some of that that's noted in our guidance and waivers, but those are the services where there's a variety of flexibilities available.
Thanks, Rhonda. The next question is, if information comes out next week with waiver updates that will be available on July 1st, and someone in self-directed services that already submitted their annual plan for review, can they make a change or edit to add something based on the new waiver? Rhonda, I'm going to kick that to you.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. You can work with your teams related to that and any updates. I think Nick was also going to share some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I was just going to say it doesn't even only apply to people in self-direction. It can apply to anybody. I mean, at any time, if there's something that needs to be revised in your plan based upon a need, please have a conversation with your case manager, your CCS, and start working through that. And if something's been submitted to the region and it hasn't been approved yet, certainly reach out to the regional reviewer. It can always be sent back. There's a lot of options there. We are flexible. I also, while I have people's ears, and I don't know if there's any other questions I'm going to be answering, I did just want to go ahead and clarify and acknowledge. I know that I got very excited during the LTSS transition, conversation earlier, but I did just want to acknowledge that we know and understand that there are agencies and folks looking at meaningful day rate conversations happening via RREG to help guide their go live date. So please understand, we absolutely know that. We understand that. We just also want to be really proactive, but we certainly don't want anyone to feel they're being pressured while they're making informed decisions about their go live date.
Thanks, Nick. Okay, our next question. Will the minimum required hours for employment increase from 3 hours?
Yeah, so I'm assuming that's for me, Dr. Smalls. Last week during the webinar, there was a conversation about creating a table that kind of essentially describes and outlines the minimum hour requirements for meaningful day, the calendars, all of those kind of complex numbers that are involved with meaningful day. So we've actually put together a table and we're going to release it next week in the DDA connection. So I don't necessarily want to dive too deep into it because it can get confusing if we're talking about numbers, and then it kind of generates a lot of other questions. So we heard your feedback, we created a table, and we're going to release it next week. So be on the lookout for the DDA connection and that table on Thursday next week.
Thanks, Nick. The next question says, could you be more specific on where on the DDA website the link to subscribe to the DDA Connection newsletter is? Couldn't see it easily. And I apologize. If you go to the home page the home DDA page and scroll to the bottom, you'll see these large colorful link cards. And right at the bottom, there's one where you can actually click to review past DDA connection newsletters. And to the left of it is one that says join our mailing list. You click that and you can get registered. The next question is, when will the new self-direction rate wage charts be available?
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. As we shared, we are updating our guidance and tools to include the reasonable and customary wages and rates. So we hope to have that available for our self-directed webinar that we're looking at having, and we'll be communicating that date next Thursday in the DDA Connection.
Thanks, Rhonda. The next question is, what is the status of the attestation required by the General Assembly before providers can transition into LTSS in FY24?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Smalls. What I can share is that we are on pace for having that report available and submitted to the General Assembly on time. We realize how important it is for us to get that report submitted so that we don't put our LTSS transition timeline at any kind of risk. So we actually started reporting on that before the final budget language was even approved. So that's always, that has been a high priority for us since we first saw that was going to be one of the required JCRs for this fiscal year. So.
Thanks, Robert. And I'm assuming a couple of you can answer this question. Is it true that transitioning youth cannot apply, or people who are young people who are transitioning youths cannot apply for the community pathways waiver, and the students only qualify for the community supports waiver?
Yeah, Yolanda, thank you for sharing that question. So a couple things to keep in mind. The DDA operates 3 waiver programs. Transitioning youth would be supported in our community supports waiver or the community pathways waiver. And both of those waivers include the same meaningful day and support services. The difference between the 2 waivers is the community pathways waiver includes our residential services. So if a youth has an assessed need related to residential services, then they would be considered for the community pathways waiver. If they're looking for support in their meaningful day, community integration, employment supports, and other support type services, then they would be considered for the community supports waiver. So again, transitioning youth could be considered for either of the waivers. It's really important to think about goals and trajectories and assess needs, and then the appropriate waiver program would be identified.
Thanks, Rhonda. Next question. How can we sign up to receive the notification for the Liberty webinars?
So that would be for if you're referring to the basic assurance review trainings, that registration link will be coming out shortly, I believe, through the DDA connections.
Yes, we will make sure that it's there. Thanks, Jennifer. The next question is, where do you sign up for the basic assurances training? Is there a link? You just answered it. We'll be providing that. Our next question. How can we verify the contact information Liberty has for our agency?
So you can do that either by sending an email directly to my email, but we do have for both the targeted case management reviews as for CCS agencies, as well as for provider agencies with the utilization reviews, specific email addresses. They were part of the communications that went out with the standard operating procedure and were discussed earlier in the webinar. So if it's the utilization reviews, that email address is mdclaimsreview@libertyhealth.com. So you can send your preferred contact information. The contacts that we have are typically CEOs and executive directors of each of the agencies as the primary contact, but we will accept other contacts if you want those to be included, and we'll keep track of those.
Thanks, Jennifer. What is the status of COMAR being updated to align with the current waiver?
Yeah, Yamunda, thank you for sharing that. The Medicaid regulations associated with the DDA operated waiver programs are being updated and created. We are working with the Office of Long-Term Services and Supports, as these are Medicaid regulations, and we hope to be sharing the regulations soon for public comments, probably in the next several months.
Thanks, Rhonda. Is the DDA considering allowing participants to have read-only access to their LTSS Maryland account?
Yes, absolutely. We are working on with the department's teams related to supporting people in the DDA programs with access to what's called the My LTSS portal. You'll see some information coming out next month related to that. And we're working on guidance and tools that will be helpful for families and participants in terms of how to access that, and coordinators of community services and how to support people in getting that access.
Thanks, Rhonda. You got a couple more here coming directly to you. This next one, will there be an updated self-directed budget sheet?
Yes, we are working on updating the self-directed budget sheet and the modification form. We're working right now with SDAM on those. We've had a couple meetings, and so our goal is to share that in the self-directed service update webinar.
Thank you. This next one, for clarification, under future hires, effective July 1st, are hires not required to have a high school diploma?
Yep, great question. As we shared last week in the Unwinding webinar, we have removed those requirements in the renewals. So refer back to those slides associated with that, and that would be correct. July 1st, and they would not be required to have the high school diploma or GED as noted on that chart that we provided last week.
Thank you. When will information about basic assurance trainings in May be shared with providers? I know we answered that. It will be in our next connection. The next question, if I am licensed for Community Pathways waiver, can I recruit for community supports? Can I recruit for community supports for approval?
Yeah, I would just say related to that, if you're a provider and you're licensed to provide a certain service or certified to provide a service under the Community Pathways waiver, you will want to reach out to the regional office provider services staff if you're interested in also providing similar services under the community supports waiver. Nick, did you want to add anything to that?
I did not. Thank you.
Thank you. There was an earlier question or comment that the registration link didn't work, and I'm assuming that's for the webinar, the waiver webinar. We do have the working link in our most recent edition of the connection, but we will make sure that it is updated in the PowerPoint that is uploaded for your review. It does not look like we have any more questions. If you've got one pending and you want to go ahead and submit that, please do. We've got a few minutes left in our presentation. Okay. All right. Do any of our DDA team want to have any last comments before we close? Okay. Well, I'd like to thank you all for attending today's webinar and posting your questions in the question box. As always, we value this feedback and we will review and respond to frequently asked questions that we missed, or if you have any additional ones, we'll use that in the updating of our DDA FAQ document. Thank you again for your dedication to our DDA community. We hope that you'll join us for our next webinar, which will be on May 26th from 10:30 to 11:30. Have a wonderful rest of your day.